What would make this an especially meaningful conversation for you today?
So I think I have some very general questions, and then it'll tackle into some more particular ones, right? I have been already studying for a little while, and I guess these I hadn't seen like a growth or a significant growth, and I felt stagnant, which is when I came across your material and I joined your class, right? But where I feel stuck really is there's two things that are really hard or that I'm not sure I quite comprehend the scope, right? Like how to really review the exam questions that I get wrong. I know you really know that that's like an important piece of making sure that we're, studying right. And then determining in that why something is out of scope. Like those two questions together, I still haven't like totally understood.
Sure. So I'll address the second one first. I don't love the phrase out of scope. To me, that's a catch-all category. It doesn't mean a whole lot. It simply means that it was not covered by the stimulus itself, which is the case for really most wrong answer choices. So I would encourage you to get more granular, get more specific in exactly why something was wrong. Was it too extreme? Was it a category of things not being discussed? Was it the right answer to the wrong question? There are a variety of ways or reasons why something could be wrong. So I'd encourage you to get more specific with it.
Okay, so like think more when you're going through let's say you're going through your wrong answers, right? Just more asking yourself why something is wrong as opposed to why something maybe is right, so that you could better scratch things off as you go along.
I would definitely suggest evaluating wrong answer choices because a lot of the time it's about choosing a tempting wrong answer. And there are four of those. So there's a lot to review. There's only one right answer. And of course, you might have gotten a question wrong because the right answer seemed unappealing. And if that was the case, you should talk about that too. But proportionally, there are more wrong answers to evaluate than right ones. And a lot of the time, they'll put a very tempting wrong answer earlier than the correct one.
Yeah, because what I have seen for myself, and I guess I'm still fairly early on in your program where I'm still figuring out how to appropriately review the wrong answers. I'll get down to two, like a right one and a wrong one, but then I'll always choose the wrong one. And then when I look back to see like what does it say about this one, it tends to be that this goes beyond what the question is asking. It goes beyond the paragraph. So it's like the tempting answer seems to be the one that gives where you're making more assumptions about what you're reading, and it's really hard. I haven't gotten there in the study program, but I'm really struggling in breaking out of that mental habit of like, why am I just adding more to this that's in front of me?
Yeah, sure. And it's not that surprising to me because the LSAT knows how we think. They know that students like strong language and we like to strengthen arguments. We gravitate towards strong language and we look to close gaps a lot of the time. But we've got to do what the question stem is asking us to do. And certain question types require more moderate language than others. Like a lot of times, necessary assumption questions, the correct answer will seem wrong. People will say because they already knew that or didn't really add anything. But the thing is, for necessary assumption, you don't want it to add anything. You
Okay.
want moderate for that particular question type. So you want to make sure that you're doing what the question's actually asking.
I know that this might be like a hard question because of for the different question types, but is there anything that you ask yourself, or is there anything intuitive where you're like, where you look at it and you say like, am I is I'm trying to figure out how to properly ask this. Like where you say to yourself, I feel like I'm going beyond what is being asked of me. Like how do I take a step back? You know what I'm saying?
That's a good question. I think that I could address it this way. Let's say if we're talking about, let's say, necessary assumption questions versus strengthening questions. Strengthening questions, it's fine for us to go beyond. It's fine for us to consider alternative possibilities or alternative explanations and dismiss them, or to better relate the evidence to the conclusion. Because if they are more related to each other, then the argument will be strengthened as a result. But all of that is new information going outside of what was in the stimulus. And the question stem says, which one of the following, if true, would most strengthen the argument? So that's fine to go beyond in those cases. For necessary assumption, though, more moderate is more likely to be correct given the question type and given the stimulus, the scope of what we're looking at there. And so when you say, do I ever feel like I'm going beyond? I guess knowing the question stem, I will either allow myself to go beyond or not.
Okay, that's a great tip. I don't think I had gotten there yet when looking at the question stems. And then another fun question type that I struggle with, and I'm not sure where to begin, is inference questions, because I feel like they're much more different than the other types where you either kind of base it off the stimulus based on the paragraph, or you can kind of allow yourself to go a little bit beyond. I don't think I have managed to get an inference question right. And I don't know what type of mindset I need to have when approaching those. Yeah, I haven't figured out a good approach based on the different ones that I've looked at.
Sure. Yeah. So inference questions are a little bit different. You're right about that. And they are more often fact sets than other types. So you're not as likely to be dealing with an argument in this question type. A fact set simply a bunch of information, no real conclusion that they're giving you. You might extract a conclusion from the fact set by combining different parts of the stimulus. But your job here is not to deal with the gap, if there is one, in any particular way. I actually frame necessary assumption questions as being a very specific kind of must be true question. So to me, necessary assumption questions are within the category of inference because no new information is permitted.
Okay, I think that's I'm seeing a pattern here, and it continues to be the going back to getting more out of a question than what you need to if an inference question is really focused about just what's there, not more than what's permitted. So it seems like there's a pattern there in kind of my failed logic when going through these questions, which
No,
is
I'm
good.
glad you spotted that. And that is great to spot that because that's something you can work on, of course.
Yeah. And I guess another issue that I'm kind of having, and I would love to get your thoughts, because so right now through week 2, right, a lot of the practice problems are not particularly timed. When it comes to the reading comprehension and the logic games, I really struggle with timing, right? So I know that there's further down the line some tips on timing, but I would like to kind of start incorporating them now, since in the 2 months I've been studying, I haven't gotten any better. Do you have any general advice on when going through the practices, even untimed, maybe how to work through getting better at that?
Sure. So let's start with reading comprehension. How are you allocating your time there right now?
So I don't think I'm doing it super efficiently. I'll read the passage once for like the greater structure, right? Like what is each paragraph? And then I'll jump into the questions. And what ends up happening is I keep trying on each question to go back to the essay. And with that, what happens is it goes really well for like the first 3 passages, but then by the last passage, I'm basically leaving myself like 5 minutes, and that's not effective. You can't, you know what I mean? I just don't know I don't know why I'm in the habit of, for every question in the reading comprehension, feeling the need to go back to the passage. And I am not sure how to break out of that or how to properly divide that time.
Yeah, sure. If there were one question type in reading comprehension where you did not feel like you needed to be going back as much, what would that be?
Probably the main point questions, like the main idea, main conclusion. Those I feel like, because I'm originally looking for just general structure, you can kind of find what the conclusion is kind of faster with the main point of the passages. But I feel like everywhere else, author questions, like why do you think they use this word, I find myself just like going back to the passage, like just inherently, like I don't even try, I will skim the question, and then like it's like an instinct to go back to the passage as if to look look again?
Sure. Yeah. So for some of those, maybe you do need to, but as you said, for main point, maybe you don't. To me, in my mind, there are three different types of reading comprehension questions. There are the global ones, like main point, main idea, primary purpose, passage organization. Then you have local, detail-oriented ones. Then finally, you have the more inferential ones that require more reading between the lines. But for that first category, maybe you don't need to go back, especially if you can find the key line or lines where they summarize it in the passage on your initial read. And you could walk away with that main idea before going on to the questions. Because after all, if you can't get the main idea from the passage, then you're not really getting anything, right? So
Yeah,
you walk away with that, you knock those global ones out, just with that main idea in mind.
that's good. And then for the inferential ones, I in reading comprehension, I also struggle with the inferential ones. I also do and this is actually, now that you say that, that does take me the most time. I'll go back and still try to find like a more concrete thing, even though it's an inferential question. For those, do you have any sort of advice? Like, would those require necessarily to go back to the passage, or is it more of like, if you understand the main idea of the passage, you should be able to make a better inference?
It depends. In some cases, you'll be able to get it through your intuition, through your memory. Other cases, you might need to go back. And so what I would suggest is that during your review process, whenever you have trouble with one of those questions, find the lines that supported the correct answer. And just
Okay.
as an exercise, keep doing that. Then you'll start to pick up on the patterns.
Okay, and that should help with the timing. Okay. And what about logic games? Right now I'm kind of in the deep of it. It's funny enough, I have my little packet of all the ones I still got to work through. And I'm taking a while, and maybe this is because I'm not making all the right inferences, but um I find myself taking about 10 to 13 minutes on some because I keep trying to make diagrams. I keep feeling like, well, did I make enough? Did I infer enough? Like, can I really comfortably scratch off what I'm scratching off so that it ends up dragging long because I want to make a diagram for most questions. And I don't know how to curb that desire of wanting to like make a diagram for everything to be sure, as opposed to maybe it, writing off based on what I've already done.
Sure. Well, diagramming is great, and making use of previous diagrams is also great. So the approach I would recommend is simply looking at your previous diagrams first to see if they will solve it for you. Maybe they'll help you eliminate a couple of choices, or maybe at least one. And then beyond that, once you've exhausted that, then you might want to diagram more. But to me, diagramming on average isn't a bad thing to do.
And from your experience, maybe in somebody that's like a little slower in these, I'm still not sure which I'm more comfortable first. Like, there has been advice that maybe you want to try and diagram as much as you can at the beginning and then go to the questions, or maybe do the basic initial diagram and then hop in and see what kind of the questions lead you. I don't know that I have tried any of those like religiously enough to be able to make a determination, but from your experience, do you see one more successful than the other?
It varies. It varies based on the game type. Some games lend themselves to it more than others. Not all games are equal. Some games will allow you to draw a lot up front. Other games won't have that much available for you to draw.
Yeah, that's true. Um, Hopefully, as I keep going and the games get harder, I can fine and tweak. And then this will be my last question. I know we're almost out of time, but there also is a lot of talk about, if you are finding yourself struggling with time, maybe make sure you do really good in like the first three and then just do like forget the last one. Like, any thoughts about that method? I am iffy on it because I really want to try and get all the points that I can get, but in terms of maybe maximizing my score, if I am not getting the timing right, what is your thoughts on that approach?
Yeah, sure. My intuition is that it depends on what your goals are. If you are committed to getting a 165 plus, in my book, that means you've got to attempt every single question. Alternatively, let's say if you're in the 140s or the 150s and you're aiming to get high 150s or around a 160, then that might be a good approach, because you knock out the hardest stuff. You don't even bother with that, and you really refine your accuracy on the others. So it's just a question of what your goals are and what you'd be happy with.
Okay. So those were all my questions. I really appreciate your time. I feel like I see like improvements already. At least so far, I've only really tackled the logic games, but even in that, I've already seen some good improvements. So I just want to say like thank you for your time again and for all the help you've offered. I'm really excited to see how this comes across and how this goes on test day.
My pleasure, Estefania. It's been great to connect with you. What would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today and from the course so far?
Even in just speaking out, I'm starting to see patterns of thinking where I need to go back and work on. So as opposed to before, you just see like you're getting all these things wrong and maybe you're not seeing where it's connecting. But then, for example, seeing where all the inference stuff and where going beyond is doing more harm than good, like that actually then helps me focus when reviewing my wrong questions, which is really where I think that's where I can make the most points gain. So now seeing that is making me feel a lot better about how to move what the plan is going to be for moving forward in terms of strategy and tackling these questions that I keep continuously getting wrong. And hopefully I can start now seeing a little bit more progress since I finally connected a couple of dots on that. So that's actually kind of pretty insightful.
Great. I'm really glad to hear it.
And then my exam is sort of around the corner, so I'll definitely be keeping you updated with how that goes. I'm really hoping my general goal at the beginning of this was to be in the mid 160s, and I feel like I'm feeling pretty good about having good chances at that. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Yeah, please do keep me posted on how everything comes along.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.